You know what's strange? Not the diary entry itself. Not even the fact that it allegedly disappeared for almost 3 weeks before suddenly reappearing inside a restricted archive room. No, what's strange is the reaction from the palace. Because when royal families face fake stories, they usually deny them immediately. Fast, clean, controlled, but this time, silence. And in royal circles, silence is never empty. It usually means somebody inside is terrified of saying the wrong thing. And according to multiple Spanish commentators this week, the phrase allegedly written inside Princess Leonor's private diary wasn't dramatic because of emotion. It was dramatic because it sounded like somebody who knew she was being watched. Not protected, watched. And honestly, the more I looked into this story, the more uncomfortable it became. Because this isn't just gossip anymore. This is starting to feel like a monarchy struggling to control its own image in real time. And if you compare it to how Prince William and Kate handle public perception in the UK, Spain suddenly looks like it's operating under completely different rules. Almost like two royal systems living in different centuries. Now here's the detail that caught my attention immediately. The alleged diary line wasn't emotional in the way tabloids usually fake these things. It was weirdly specific. Reportedly, Leonor wrote, "I stopped recognizing which moments belong to me. That doesn't sound theatrical. That sounds exhausted. And maybe I'm wrong here, but people don't usually write sentences like that unless they've been under pressure for a very long time. Especially someone her age. Especially someone raised inside an institution where every gesture is analyzed frame by frame online." And this is where the story gets darker. Because sources close to royal commentators are now suggesting Leonor's inner circle had become increasingly restrictive during the past year, particularly after her military training appearances exploded online. Not because she failed, because she became too popular. Think about that for a second. The palace spent years trying to modernize the monarchy. Then suddenly Leonor starts gaining real attention organically. Military photos, public speeches, the confidence, the discipline, and instead of relaxing control, the system reportedly tightened around her. That's the part nobody wants to say out loud. And before we go deeper into this, if you're new to Leonor's story, subscribe. I post every day. Because honestly, this situation is becoming one of the most fascinating royal transformations happening anywhere right now. Not just in Spain, anywhere. Now here's where my own opinion started changing. At first, I thought this was probably another exaggerated royal leak. You know the type. A random insider claims secret tension. A blurry source appears. The media stretches it for clicks. Normal. But then I noticed something important. Spanish media didn't attack the story aggressively. They danced around it carefully. And that usually tells you something. When media outlets are too cautious around a rumor, it often means the topic itself is sensitive enough that nobody wants legal or institutional pressure. And honestly, that's when I started asking myself a different question. What if the diary itself isn't even the real story? What if the real story is why this narrative is surfacing now? Because timing matters. Always. Especially with royal families. Right now, Leonor is entering a dangerous phase for any future monarch. The transition from symbol to individual. And institutions hate unpredictability. A younger royal becoming relatable sounds good publicly. But internally, that can terrify traditional structures. Because once people connect emotionally to the person instead of the institution, control weakens. And I think that's exactly what we're watching happen. The palace may have created the perfect modern princess. But now they're realizing modern audiences don't want perfection anymore. They want authenticity. And authenticity cannot be fully managed. That's the contradiction. Honestly, it reminds me of what happened when younger audiences suddenly connected with Princess Diana decades ago. Not because she was flawless, but because people sensed emotion breaking through the royal script. And I know some people hate comparisons like that. But come on, you can already see the pattern forming online. Every time Leonor looks uncomfortable at an event, every time a clip goes viral where she seems distant or overly controlled, the public reacts stronger than the palace expects. Why? Because audiences in 2026 are trained to detect performance. We live in the TikTok era, the live stream era, the caught off guard era. People trust tiny human moments more than official statements now. That changes everything for monarchies. And honestly, I think some royal institutions still haven't adapted psychologically to that reality. Now let's talk about the monitoring part of this story, because this is where things become genuinely unsettling. One royal analyst this week pointed out something I can't stop thinking about. Leonor's public schedule reportedly became more rigid right around the period these alleged diary frustrations were written. More security, more controlled appearances, less spontaneity. And yes, obviously royals need protection. That's normal. But there's a line where protection starts looking like surveillance. And if Leonor herself felt that line being crossed, that changes how people interpret every recent appearance. Suddenly viewers begin replaying interviews differently, looking at body language differently. Even silence feels loaded, and whether the diary is fully authentic or partially exaggerated almost becomes irrelevant at that point. Because the emotional idea has already entered public consciousness. That's how royal narratives spiral. And this is where I think the palace made a serious mistake. Instead of addressing public curiosity transparently, they allowed silence to create mythology. Big mistake in 2026. Because modern audiences fill silence with speculation immediately. Especially younger viewers. If Mr. Beast understands one thing better than almost any institution right now, it's this. Attention gaps get filled instantly. And royal families still operate like they can pause narratives through formality. That world is gone. Now information mutates every hour. One clip becomes 10 theories. One expression becomes a trending analysis thread. And honestly, some of the palace's reactions lately feel like they still think they're managing media from 2004 instead of 2026. Now personally, I don't think Leonor wants rebellion. I really don't. That's the lazy interpretation. What I think we're seeing is something more human. A young woman trying to survive the psychological weight of becoming a symbol before fully becoming herself. And that's brutal. Imagine knowing every smile becomes analysis. Every friendship becomes speculation. Every exhausted expression becomes headlines. Most adults couldn't handle that pressure. Now imagine growing up inside it. And this is where the diary story hit harder for people than expected. Because for one brief moment, the future queen didn't sound royal. She sounded normal, confused, overwhelmed, observed, human, and ironically, that humanity may be exactly why audiences are connecting to her more than ever. The palace probably sees vulnerability as risk. But audiences increasingly see vulnerability as truth. That gap matters a lot. And here's the thing nobody really talks about openly. Monarchies survive on emotional relevance now. Not power, not authority, relevance. And Leonor might accidentally become Spain's most emotionally relevant royal figure precisely because she appears trapped between duty and identity. People recognize that struggle instantly. Especially Gen Z audiences. Because honestly, most young people today already feel monitored in their own lives. Social media, algorithms, constant observation. So when they hear a future queen allegedly writing about not recognizing which moments belong to her anymore, it feels weirdly relatable. That's why this story exploded. Not because of scandal, because of emotional recognition. And maybe that's the biggest irony here. The tighter institutions try controlling modern public figures, the more audiences search for signs of real emotion underneath the control. Now does this mean every rumor is true? Of course not. Some of these stories are absolutely exaggerated. Royal coverage thrives on mystery. But I also think dismissing everything as tabloid nonsense misses the bigger shift happening right now. People are no longer watching royal families the way previous generations did. They're analyzing them psychologically, almost like reality shows mixed with political symbolism. And that changes the stakes completely. Because now audiences don't just ask, what happened? They ask, how did she feel? That's new. And honestly, I think institutions are struggling to adapt to that emotional level of scrutiny. Especially in Spain. Now one final thought before we end this. If the diary entry is real, even partially, then the most important line wasn't the sadness. It was the self-awareness. Because recognizing that your life is being curated around you. That's the first stage of questioning the system itself. And once someone begins noticing the walls around them, they rarely unsee them completely. That doesn't mean revolution. It doesn't mean collapse. But it does mean change. And whether the palace likes it or not, Leonor's story is no longer being shaped only by royal tradition anymore. It's being shaped by millions of people online interpreting every moment in real time. That's a completely different battlefield. And honestly, I don't think the monarchy is fully prepared for it yet.